Saludos. I am Jorge Merced, Associate Artistic Director at Pregones Puerto Rican Traveling Theater. And on behalf of our entire family of artists, thank you for being with us in this new series that we call Spotlight, where you get an inside look at the creative process of some of the artists connected to our company. This particular episode is devoted to the art of photography, and we are honored to have with us two amazing artists, Marisol Díaz-Gordon and Joe Conzo. Marisol is a photographer that has been documenting many of their productions right here at Pregones, both in the Bronx and in Manhattan. She's also a photojournalist and a professor of photography. Joe Conzo is known for his work documenting the history of hip-hop theater here in the Boogie Down Bronx. But here at Pregones, he has decided to share with us an amazing exhibit of some of the great Latin giants of music. If you are watching this episode online, please go to our webpage after the episode and take a look at the exhibit online. Once again, thank you for being part of our family and for joining Spotlight.
My name is Joe Conzo. I'm somewhat of a famous photographer. We're at Pregones Theater right here in the Bronx, 2 blocks from where I grew up from, Michelangelo Apartments. And I'm honored to be here. Really, really honored to be here.
My name is Marisol Díaz-Gordon. I am from the Bronx, and my parents were born in Puerto Rico.
I come from a family of activism where literally my grandmother, Dr. Evelina Antonetti, gave her life to the Bronx. Being around the corner from Ostos College, as a kid, doing sleepovers there because the city wanted to close it down back in the late 70s, early 80s. So the Bronx is dear to my heart. The demonstrations against Hollywood, Fort Apache the Bronx, the activism in the Bronx, and just the Bronx as a whole. We have so much, and we have given so much to the world. The birth of hip-hop from the Bronx, the birth of salsa, boogaloo, so much doo-wop, graffiti. Just, the Bronx is the Bronx.
I am a photojournalist, a documentary photographer, a fine art photographer, commercial photographer, a seer, a looker, a wanderer. I am a human being that likes to observe, and I like to feel my surroundings. I am also an adjunct professor, and for the past 5 years or so at City College, teaching photojournalism.
My first camera was probably a little point and shoot 110 Kodak Instamatic camera that was probably handed down to me. I give a lot of homage to my stepfather, Michael Caine, who was an avid family photographer who put the photography bug in me, so to speak. And photography just became a love and passion that I fell in love with. I was that chubby kid, with a big afro that wasn't good in sports, wasn't good, with mi boca and speaking, but I was the only kid in the neighborhood that had a camera.
I think the first time I realized I wanted to be a photographer might have been when I held my mom's Canonette camera, which is a Canon camera, but called Canonette. It's a 35 millimeter camera. And I think she loaned it to me at my cousin's wedding back in the 1980s. So I had a 110 before that I used to use, but I think it was that camera. And I believe it was aperture priority. I didn't know what that meant. She just used to tell me, put it here and just go with that. I didn't know what I was doing. I used to do drawing and painting on my own, but I think it was that, there's magic that happens. You point the viewfinder at someone or something, and then somehow it stays on the film. And then you go somewhere and you and then you go somewhere and you come back and they're on this two-dimensional object and it's magic. And growing up in the Bronx, growing up in the projects, you didn't have a voice. You just looked out your window and imagined what was out there because you couldn't go out much, right? There was a lot of trouble everywhere. But this camera, I would point somewhere and I would capture something. So I knew that that was my voice.
So I wear a lot of hats when it comes to my photographic archives. I'm known mostly for my hip hop archives, and that's because I went to school with some of the pillars, some of the pioneers of hip hop. But a little known fact is that my father was Tito Puente's personal confidant, Joe Conzo Sr. And when I wasn't hanging out with my friends from school who were putting together this billion-dollar industry called hip hop, I was hanging out with my dad, Joe Conzo Sr. And through him, hanging out with Tito, I got to shoot and be befriended by the greats. I mean, Celia Cruz was known as Titi when I was around her. Eddie and Charlie Palmieri, you know, Hector Lavoe, I mean, Johnny Pacheco, Ray Barretto. These were giants of the Latin music business, but to me, they were like Titi and Tio. You know what I mean? That's how close my father was to them. And I just happened to be a teenager hanging out with my dad, going to these shows, going to their houses, and photographing them.
I use my camera to learn, but I also use my camera to show people what I've learned. So sometimes I've gotten stuck shooting and I have to take a step back. And what I do is I meditate with my camera. I'll put the camera down and I'll close my eyes and I'll meditate and I'll see with my body. So I'll feel and see with my skin. I can hear the people around me. So when I open my eyes, the colors are more vivid. The people are more vivid. I can almost see their spirit. And then I begin to shoot again. Sometimes you let your own subjectivity get in the way of what you're shooting. The triptychs were actually single images, and they were shot as single images for a series, a Manhattan, Lower East Side Manhattan series, exhibited downtown, talking about one of the greats. I met with Juan Sanchez years ago, and he saw that body of work, and he loved it, and he said, you should consider making triptychs out of these. Figure out how some of these images can work together as triptychs or diptychs. And it was his idea that the images should have a language and should communicate with one another. I started out, like many photographers, early on as black and white artist. And the way I started out as gelatin silver print in college. And I was so firm on black and white being the best medium, being the truth. And there is a big part of me that still believes that. There is a delicacy to black and white. A lot of people feel this way. There is a purity to it. There is less distraction. It's kind of like a bullseye. This is what it is. There is no extra seasoning to it. This is your plate of food. And that's it.
La Mesa is a shot that I have of Ray Barretto, Tito Puente, Johnny Pacheco, Charlie Palmieri, and Joe Quijano. One of my most iconic Latin images shots that I have. It was taken at Beau's Restaurant in the Bronx, up in the North Bronx, up by Tremont, Pelham Parkway up there. It was a going away party for Charlie Palmieri. Charlie Palmieri was going to retire, go move back to Puerto Rico and, enjoy his life. And it was just a get together of who's who in the Latin music business. To have them all sitting at one table was just phenomenal. I call it La Mesa, the Latin Giants, and it's just a candid shot of, of all of them sitting down having a good time.
That is the pool at Van Cortlandt Park, and it was shot for the B section at the Riverdale Press when I was the chief photographer and photo editor. And it's a feature photo essay. And he was like a leaf laying there, so delicate. So I just had to do it. Not all newspaper photos are bad. Many times you get these yumminess. I think inspiration comes from the very moment in which you were born, right? That seed gets planted early, so your inspiration comes from your parents, your siblings, your heroes, right? And then you have the heroes that they talk about. Roberto Clemente. It's like, oh my God, we had Jesus Christ and Roberto Clemente. It's crazy, but you had those growing up, at least in my home. And then getting older, professor at City College said, you have to join Enfoco. And what is Enfoco? People like you. And then I met Charles Biasi de Rivera, and then I met Juan Sanchez, and then I heard about David Gonzalez, and then Angel Franco was like rumored in there. And then it went on and on and on, and then you start seeing their work. I needed to immerse myself in groundbreaking photographers who were Puerto Rican photographers, so that I can understand that they paved the ground so that I can follow in their footsteps and understand their sacrifices. It's trying to figure out that you need to value yourself and understand that you're not the only one and you're not the first, that there are others are out there doing it too. And you need to embrace yourself and love yourself and push yourself forward. So I look at them and say, I can do this too because they've been doing it.
I'm part of a collective, Say del Sur, Ricky Flores, Francisco Reyes, and, Edwin Pagan, who, we make it our business to tell our story, our way, because we lived it. And if it wasn't for places like Pregones and the Puerto Rican Traveling Theater, we wouldn't have spaces to tell our story. I mean, looking at the exhibit today, it's just wonderful. It takes me back to a time of innocence, so to speak. Photographers were treated a different way back then. It's just been a love and passion all these years. And this exhibition is just, again, another checklist off my bucket list of showing the foundation of Latin music. This is New York's contribution to the Latin music explosion that was going on during the late 70s and 80s. And I was fortunate enough to capture some of the giants.
This is a message from Carlos. He says, I support Pregones PRTT because Boricua artistic expression was born of the racial, cultural, and linguistic roots which formed us. Hacer arte es hacer patria. Help the young to know themselves. I mean, this is exactly one of the reasons why I love PRTT and Pregones, is because this was the first place I worked when I moved to New York City as a young artist. It's one of the only places in New York where I can explore my artistic side and my culture, and it's a place where both of those things can come together.
I really do feel that the level of integrity in the work, also in the sense of community with front of house and just everybody involved in the Pregones family, makes people feel happy and makes people leave the theater feeling lifted.
It speaks to our current moment here in the world where people need to escape. And I love that this theater provides inspiration and a reminder of our beautiful culture. I feel that it is a place, a sanctuary for artists, Puerto Rican artists, to develop their craft, develop themselves as people. And it provides that for not only Puerto Ricans here in New York City and abroad, but also it provides that for other Latino artists and also artists from the LGBTQ+ community.
We are so proud to be recognized as one of the leading Latinx theater ensembles in the nation. And we're home to more than 20 artists ranging from choreographers, actors, designers, playwrights, who continue to share their stories and their talent on our stages, both in the Bronx and in Manhattan. The support of our donors not only helps to keep the legacy that Miriam Colon set forth here at Pregones Puerto Rican Traveling Theater, but also impacts artists, for instance, in Puerto Rico, where we have been able to institute grants, emergency grants, to artists that were affected by Hurricane Maria, and now most recently by artists who were also affected by the earthquakes in Puerto Rico. Thank you for your support. Thank you for being part of our family.
I've had exhibitions all over the world. I mean, this kid from the South Bronx, I've been to Bulgaria. I mean, how freaking cool is that? Bulgaria. I've been to Japan, Asia, you name it. There's nothing more gratifying than having an exhibit in your own home. And Pregones has been a staple in the Bronx community, God knows how long. This exhibition here is dear to me because they're candid shots of people that I got to know through my father. Tito graduated from Juilliard, and he did these scholarships for kids from Juilliard. And my dad and Robert Rodriguez ran the Tito Puente Scholarship Fund for many years. So that shot of Potato was at Lehman College back in 1981 during one of the Tito Puente Scholarship Fund concerts there. What's so distinctive of that shot is that, you know, I'm a young photographer shooting these giants, and like his hand is out of focus because that's how fast his hand would be playing on the congas. And it's just one of those iconic moments during one of his performances that I love so much.
I think Pregones needs to give a class at a college level on Puerto Rican culture, Puerto Rican history, because you can come here and learn so much about things that are not being taught that people need to know, and not just Puerto Ricans, but non-Puerto Ricans alike. And that's the image of El Borero was my downfall. The lighting in that scene, the expression, the facial expression, and that performance as a whole, and the lighting, the set design, the costume, just everything as a whole, the colors, was just so beautiful and dramatic. And sometimes it's so overpowering that I have to take myself away from the camera. And I think that those performances, especially in that one, I had to do that a few times because it was just so powerful. And that image is one of them. Like, the actor transformed himself so much, and that image, you can really see it.
I've been to countless exhibitions here, countless performances, countless this, and just to be invited here to show my work, I'm so grateful. So thank you to Pregones. This was a long process that we went through. You know, we didn't know whether we wanted to do hip hop, Latin, a combination of both. And we decided to keep it strictly, Latin. And, even though the hip hop images aren't shown, people don't know that Tito Puente played on Sugar Hill Gang's first album. So you may not see any hip hop images, but Latin music and Latin musicians played a big role in hip hop culture. Most of the photographs were challenging. The one of Tito Puente was taken at Madison Square Garden during one of Ralph Mercado's Fania All-Stars or salsa concerts that he did. I had to take into effect that the lighting was decent, but I had to take into effect that the lighting could burn out and stuff. So, you had to make sure you had the correct settings on your camera. Everything was done manually, unlike today where you put your camera on automatic and it does everything for you. Tito played, hard, just like Mongo did and just like Potato, and Ray Barreto. So, you had to take into account, how fast or how hard they were playing. So the Tito shot, I caught him dead on, where there is no blur in him playing the timbales. Mongo, dear to our family, he was a close family friend, and hearing his music played by my parents growing up was special, and then seeing him perform was even more special.
That is a photo that I took of Miriam Coron. I love photos of stage, but I also love photos of things that you're not supposed to be seeing behind the scenes. So she was autographing flyers of what I believe was her movie. It was a poster of her movie that was premiering or being shown at PRTT. That was left behind in her green room that day, and I was giddy, and there she was signing. And I thought, oh my God, I'm actually here. You better start taking pictures, because this is a very unique opportunity, and that's what you're here for. So stop being giddy. Do your job. Press that button. You just have to stop being a fan and start realizing the historical moment that this is and the significance of it and your part in it, of being that documentarian, because that's what that is, right? At that moment, you're a documentarian.
Photography back then was special to me because it gave me access to so many different venues and different environments and everything like that. But again, I was that young 17, 18-year-old kid who could only afford 1, 2, 3 rolls of film. You wanted to conserve that roll of film as much as you can, because you can only take 36 pictures. Unlike today, you pop in a digital card, you could take 1,000 pictures. So, you composed your shot, you knew what you wanted to shoot, what you wanted to do, but you wanted to tell a story also. I wanted my photographs to tell a story and to be able to transport you back into a time. And so, shots at concerts, you didn't want to take away from the performance. So you went, took your picture, and moved to the side. So, I was fortunate enough to grab some great shots, doing some great performances of some great pioneering legends of our culture.
So the past 12 months, I've been sidelined with an injury. And the pandemic has hit my family in a way that a few people know about. My father was sick. My mother was sick with COVID. My brother was severely sick. My father passed away from COVID, April 26th. So the family has been pretty devastated. No flower shops were open, so the flowers in my garden were the flowers we took to my father. So it's been pretty rough. I was like his tomboy. I always chased him, and he's gone. But the strangest thing, like as rough as it's been, I think the past month, like I started to accept it, and I see him in my dreams. Butterflies surround my sister and me. I started playing the guitar, so I haven't been taking pictures, but past 2-3 months, I picked up a guitar, I play music. So I'm still being an artist, but I started playing, I can't take pictures yet because of the injury, but I'm playing the guitar. So my art has changed for a little bit.
I'm grateful to be a part of this family because without this, what do we have? We have outsiders telling our stories, and I'm sorry. I wasn't raised that way. My grandmother, instilled in me, my mother instilled in, we got to go out there, preserve what we got, help each other as human beings, and keep our story alive. My images are in Cornell University, where you can go online. 10,000 of my negatives are stored in Cornell University, and you can go online and look at the protests going on in the Bronx, or hip hop, or Latin music. And, my negatives sit on the same shelf as the Gettysburg Address. How fucking cool is that? You know what I mean? So when I'm gone, people can still do research. And when we're gone, Pregones will still be here telling stories, and the Puerto Rican Traveling Theater and all that. And I'm just happy to be a part of the family. And we need more of this, so thank you.
I'm gonna tell you a little secret before I tell you one of the gotitas. This is a few. Is that I love their gotitas too. That's the one thing I'm gonna say. I love teaching because I love getting their feedback too, because they're brilliant. If you wanna be an artist, understand that there's something there that you have. There's something there that you have to offer. Rule number 1, you have something to offer. Rule number 2, the people in front of you have something to offer too. So listen to them as well. Respect those that came before you. Listen to them. Listen to them, take from them, and give back as well.
It's our responsibility to document our history, to tell our story. And I'm getting a little emotional, but it's important to us to tell our story, our way, the way we saw it, the way we photographed it, the way we recorded it, and this and the other, because it's going to be lost. I'm just grateful that I'm part of the story also with my images. And when I'm gone, my images will be here.
Saludos. I am Jorge Merced, Associate Artistic Director at Pregones.